So how do we find that story between the verses?
Yeah, sure. Let's get right to it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we're going to go right to the first verse of the Bible, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So that's verses 1 and 2. And so a few clues stand out right away. The first thing is the first sentence. The Bible gives no age of the earth. It just says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It's indeterminate. There's no time frame put on that. Human beings is different. The creation of humans, but the earth, there's no time put on it. And then we look here, this gets into the Hebrew. It says the earth was without form and void. And that verb there, haya, in Hebrew is a very different verb from the verb to be in English, the way we use it in America. So we can say it's very static. You can say, I am a lawyer, I am a Christian, whereas there isn't really a verb to be like that in Hebrew. When you hear the word is or was in Hebrew, it implies an action, a transition. It's a dynamic verb. And so just to give some examples, you can just look in Genesis chapter 2, when God creates Adam, it says he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils and he became a living soul. That's haya. Sodom and Gomorrah, when the angels were rescuing Lot's family out of Sodom and Gomorrah before God destroyed it. And he said, you just don't look back at the city. And of course, Lot's wife chose to look back. And it says she became a pillar of salt. That's haya. And so that's that same verb. So it's implying an action took place. Something happened there. So right off the bat, really and this is when you go back to more ancient texts and certainly ancient commentaries, they render the passage, and the earth became without form and void. And then we have the next clue, those terms without form and void, tohu vabohu. In Hebrew, that term is used repeatedly to refer to a destructive judgment of God. And so
there's a whole part of the story we don't get. I mean, just from the beginning, right?
Exactly.
Ryan, do you think, you say the ancients, do you think that this was, because we talk about this often on the show, we are so far disconnected from the context, if you will, the ancients had to this. So do you think that this was just like they understood by the Hebrew, like, there was something, there's a story before the story. Our story starts and the earth is in ruin, and that they were like, that's how it went, and they kind of had that understanding, as opposed to a lot of folks probably now look at it. We're as human, we look at things linearly, right? And we're like, everything happened in this order, and there's no pre-story. But oftentimes we feel like we are missing, like as you're writing about it, they're missing like this sort of context to why and how and it just sort of, we arrive on the scene and there's in the middle of a story.
Exactly. And that was the ancient understanding that basically Genesis 1 is Star Wars: A New Hope, right?
Yeah.
It's episode 4. Like we are arriving in the middle of the saga. And you can look at some translations of the ancient Hebrew Targums actually translate to the earth became a ruin and a waste, which is why in the 1800s, a lot of theologians actually called the gap theory the ruin reconstruction theory, taking it from the Targums. Then you have church fathers like Origen, for example, John Chrysostom, who openly, very explicitly wrote of pre-Adamic civilizations, of Lucifer inhabiting earth before Adam in ancient times, obviously. So you have that. There's certainly lots of documented evidence of this in the ancient church.
Old school Blurry episodes.
They're right.
I'm surprised how many those guys got real weird in some of their thinking.
Well, probably had a lot of time to think about stuff. Yeah. And then if you wanted to meme people, you had to send them by the mail. You sent them memes in the mail. It was like the Amish do.
Between rock throwing contests, they had to have some really great.
We did one of those in Peru, and I won. As a reminder, everybody. Timothy Alberino, I won.
How long you think? You're saying millions of years of
we can only guess, yeah.
Right? Yeah, I think so. And again, if we operate under the premise that everything is repeating, everything to come prophetically has happened in some form or fashion before, we're going to live in an era where, the veil between the human realm and the heavenly realm is open, right? Whether you talk about the millennium reign or certainly the New Jerusalem, right? Yeah. Heaven is coming down to earth. And so I believe at this time, there was no need for that veil of separation before the sin of Lucifer. So when you have that type of heaven on earth existence, the passage of time is so different. And so even one of the passages I talk about, that's I think a principal passage that talks about this is 2 Peter chapter 3. Yeah.